This is my copy of Sunrise on the Reaping. All of the yellow tabs are things that pissed me off. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to come back and do a little bit of a reading recap of the books that I've read over the past 2 months. I feel like I don't read enough books per month to sort of justify doing like one whole kind of video like each month. But then I feel like this month, or like these past 2 months in particular, I read like a lot, for me at least. So I feel like I have like a lot of books to kind of update on. For March in particular, I only read 2 books just because I ended up starting back up at uni. And so I was trying to kind of juggle between reading for fun versus reading for uni. But then in April, I ended up reading 7 books. I'm just going to start with the 2 books that I read for March. The 2 books that I did read were also the books from like my 25 for 2025 that I wanted to read. The first book that I read in March, part of my book club with my friends, was The DallerGut Dream Department Store by Lee Mi-yi, translated by Sandy Jusan Lee. I've taken some notes. I'm reading them from my screen. It's basically like a magical realism, like fantasy book that conceptualizes the dreams that we have when we go to sleep, and it conceptualizes dreams as a product that has been sort of written and directed, and our unconscious selves will go to a department store that's selling these dreams and we'll pick out or purchase a dream. In this book we follow Penny as she gets a job at the DallerGut department store. I don't know, I love this book so much. She basically like learns about the products that she's selling, as well as the different levels that people go to depending on the type of dream that they're after. One of the levels of the department store is just like really fast paced, really chaotic. There's just like animals everywhere, and she's like, what the heck is this place? And the guy's like, oh, I sell nap dreams. I sell dreams that people have for naps. So it's usually just old people, babies, and like dogs and cats running around because they sleep so often during the day. They're the people who are just getting like these really short kind of dreams and stuff like that. This book isn't like really super heavy on plot. I know that there is a sequel that's out called Return to the DallerGut Dream Department Store. I haven't read that one yet, and I don't really have like a strong urge to go out and read it. I feel like this book itself, it ended in a way that felt like really satisfying. So there's nothing that's in me that feels incomplete without reading like a sequel. Yeah, there's not a lot of, I guess, plot. It's just kind of vibes. It feels like pure vibes, and I absolutely love this book. I rated it 5 stars. Just as like a little slight spoiler, just going into like this little section, there's a section where Penny is helping DallerGut, the guy who owns the department store, who runs it. She's helping him take a custom order from a customer, and the customer themselves is just like this really sickly looking woman. And as Penny is like taking notes for this custom order, she realizes that this woman is close to death, and this woman is wanting to create a custom order dream for her husband and her daughter to have after she has passed. And she's like, talking about the kind of details that she would want in the dream, the kind of things or the kind of answers that she would want to give them in the dream. We then also like end up seeing glimpses into like these other people's lives, like these strangers' lives. We see a man whose grandma visits him at a cafe, and we also see a couple whose young daughter had visited them in a dream. And I think it was like a really beautiful way to sort of conceptualize these sort of like weird dreams that you can have after someone has passed away as part of like that grief process. That section, it made me sob so damn hard. Like, yeah, dude, yeah, I don't know, it was just like a really beautiful way to sort of like imagine what is happening when one of your loved ones kind of comes to you in a dream after they've like passed away or something like that. I don't know. I really loved it. I thought it was beautiful. It was the first time that I've ever like sort of ventured into like the magical realism type of world. If all of them are like that, if all of them feel so whimsical and beautiful, like I'll happily read more of them. The next book that I read in March was this one. This is Tree of Codes by Jonathan Safran Foer. This is also a part of my 25 for 2025. This itself, it's a remix work, I guess, of The Street of Crocodiles by Bruno Schultz. Jonathan Safran Foer, he's taken Street of Crocodiles and he's cut words out of the sentences of that book. He's cut out words from each page in order to create new sentences with new meanings. Apparently Goodreads describes this as a story of an enormous last day of life as one character's life is chased to extinction. I didn't get that at all when I read this. When I read this, I was able to do it in like an hour, like at one sort of sitting. It might look like it thickens, but remember, pages upon pages, there's a bunch of words missing. So you might get a page with only 5 whole words on there before you need to like turn it. It's not, the pages aren't double-sided, so it might look daunting to read this in an hour, but it's very easy to do. I read this kind of as a story of like, I don't know, a child viewing their parents' marriage breakdown. I don't understand this sort of perception of it being someone's life being chased into extinction. That's not my reading. That wasn't my reading at all. I would be very interested in like reading this book again, maybe not anytime soon, but it is definitely something that I think I would need to reread to get like a full grasp of it itself. It reads like a long poem, and that's the sort of viewpoint that I'm going with it. I read it as a poem, even though I might not see it as a story of extinction. I read it as a poem, and poetry's all up to the beholder, the person who's reading it, basically. I also ended up rating that one 5 stars. I'm not sure if I am rating it 5 stars because of the content itself, or if I'm rating it 5 stars just due to the novelty. The fact that it is a remix work, the fact that it is pages that are cut out from another book. If I do like end up rereading it, it might be something that I will, possibly bump down the rating. But for now, I'm still keeping it as a 5 star. Those were the 2 books that I did finish in March. There was one other book that I did try or attempt to sort of read, and I ended up not finishing it. So I had one DNF for March, and that was Something Bad Is Going to Happen by Jessie Stevens. I had bought this book a while ago on like the Kindle ebook store, and then I ended up seeing a YouTube video of Nicole Raffi recommending this book. And because I already owned the ebook and because of Nicole Raffi's like recommendation, I thought, yeah, cool, I'll give it a go. I'll read this book. Because the book itself is supposed to be set like in Sydney or within like the greater Sydney region, as someone who lives in the greater Sydney region, it was painful. I ended up getting the shits with it because they said that one of the characters, Jake, I think, is supposed to be from a suburb called Canoodle. Canoodle is not a suburb that exists. It doesn't exist at all, and it definitely does not exist in Sydney. There had been other discussions like previous to this between like Adela and Jake about a date that Jake had gone on with a girl who had like family tennis courts. And so if you're wanting to have like a conversation about wealth disparities within the different areas of the greater Sydney region, I think to not ground the story in a real suburb where there is weight or like wealth differences, it felt disingenuous, I guess, is what I want to say. The to to try to have these conversations about wealth from someone who is pretty rich now because you're like married into the Mamma Mia media conglomerate family or whatever, and now you want to have a conversation about wealth disparities in Sydney. I don't know, felt disingenuous. If you can't name an actual suburb, I have a feeling that you didn't live in any actual suburb like this and you just want to sort of talk about it without living it. That's everything that I read in March. Now moving on to everything that I read in April. Like I said, I read a whole lot more in April. I read 7 books in April, which is a lot more for me. The first book that I read in April was another one from my 25 for 2025, and that was Sirens of Titan by Kurt Vonnegut. This book, I guess it's a science fiction kind of novel. It was Kurt Vonnegut's like second novel. We follow Winston Niles Rumford, who is like this rich, eccentric man. He's able to travel space, and he was traveling in his spaceship with his dog named Kazakh. And so his spaceship ended up getting caught in a chronosynclastic infundibulum. Everyone knows what that is, right? No one needs an explanation on that. Perfect, thank you. And so because of being stuck in this chronosynclastic infundibulum, he'll basically like phase in and phase out of planet. And so for example, he phases in on Earth every 59 days. And so it's become like a bit of a spectacle on Earth on the 59th day to see him phase in for an hour, and he will be phasing in at his mansion that he used to live at with his wife and his butler and stuff like that. One of the times that he like phases in, he summons a man called Malachi Constant, who is the richest man in the world. He summons this man to his mansion and he says, Malachi, you are going to join me on Titan, the moon of Jupiter. You are going to impregnate my wife and you guys are going to have a son, and that son is going to be the most important person in the world and you need to protect that son. That's what's going to happen. I see everything because of the chronosynclastic infundibulum. And so like after being told all this, Malachi Constant is like, okay, cool. What if I don't want to do that? What if I don't want to go to Titan? What if I don't want to impregnate your wife? What if I don't want to cuck you right now? I don't know. I don't want to have a spoiler section for this one because I think it's like such a really fun book. And part of me really wishes that like, I don't know, there were good movie adaptations of Kurt Vonnegut's work. Like as much as it is like a science fiction book, I would also say that it is like just like a normal like literary fiction type book. If you kind of consider, you know, questions that it sort of poses, it asks questions about like things like free will. And that's all I'll say about it. I really like this book. And I really like the story of it. And I really like Kurt Vonnegut. Don't tell me anything bad about him. I don't want to hear it. The next book that I read was unintentionally also space themed, and I think it was also supposed to be like a science fiction book. That was, of course, Orbital by Samantha Harvey. Although this book is so short, it was such like a slog. Maybe slog isn't the right word, but it was a pain to get through. Like it was a chore and a half to read this book. I was basically catfished by this book by the fact that it has that little sticker up there in the corner that says that it was Booker Prize winner of 2024. The book itself, it follows 6 people in space. There are 4 astronauts and then 2 cosmonauts. They're called cosmonauts because they are Russian. They're from the Russian space, and so they need to be called cosmonauts rather than astronauts. For the purpose of this little recap of my read, I'm just going to call everyone an astronaut. I don't give a fuck. You understand what I mean. I'm not saying 4 astronauts, 2 cosmonauts. We follow these 6 astronauts. The premise that's sold to me as part of the blurb on the inside of the little cover, because the back of it, where a blurb typically would be, the back of it is taken up by stupid fucking quotes of people who reviewed it, and I fucking hate you. Although separated from the world, they cannot escape its constant pull. News reaches them of the death of a mother, and with it comes thoughts of returning home. The fragility of human life fills their conversations, their fears, their dreams. So far from Earth, they have never felt more part or more protective of it. They begin to ask, what is life without Earth? What is Earth without humanity? Those questions are not fucking asked in this book at all, okay? This book sucked. It sucked. I think it thought that it was being profound, but it really wasn't. That blurb talking about like the news of a mother dying on Earth, it made me presume that maybe there was going to be like an impactful news story about like a mother who died. You know, maybe it was like a random mother who was like protecting her babies. Maybe it was Lily Potter protecting little Harry Potter from Voldemort, and the story of Lily Potter protecting little Harry Potter from Voldemort reached them up at that space station, and they were like, "Whoa, that is profound. That makes me think." But no, it's just one of the astronauts' mother who passes away. Everything that this little blurb says about the fragility of human life fills their conversations, their fears, their dreams. None of that is really discussed. Half of this fucking book is just lists of the stuff that they're doing on their space station as part of like their normal astronauty tasks, other lists of things that they miss from home, other lists of things that they don't miss from home, lists of countries that they're flying over right now, lists of oceans and seas that they're flying over. This book, I think, thinks that it's a whole lot deeper than it actually is, and it feels as if the whole book can be sort of boiled down to, from space, countries have no borders. And like, that's supposed to be the most profound thing. I came to this book kind of expecting William Shatner's response to his Blue Origin flight, and instead I got Katy Perry's response to her Blue Origin flight.
And you're looking into blackness, into black ugliness. And you look down, and there's the blue down there, and the black up there, and it's It's just, there is Mother and Earth and comfort, and is there death? I don't know. Is that death? Is that the way death is? Whoop, and it's gone. Jesus. It was so moving to me. This experience has been something unbelievable.
You are officially an astronaut.
Thank you so much.
How do you feel?
I feel super connected to love. So connected to love. I think this experience has shown me you never know how much love is inside of you, like how much love you have to give, and how loved you are until the day you launch.
And that's what this book fucking feels like. We should love each other. We get along with the cosmonauts even though they're Russian. So, that's what space. There's no borders up in space. I think the only reason that I finished that book is because I thought this is a prize winner. I should be getting something out of this. And I finished it. I turned that final page and I got nothing out of it. How did this win a prize? Who was judging this? Who were judging? What were the books last year just that shit? That this is the only contender for a winner? Get it out of my face. I didn't love it. I read it, but I didn't love it. That one I gave 2 stars, okay? The next book that I read, complete change of vibe and tone. It was The Rachel Incident by Caroline O'Donoghue. This book, I gave it a 4 star. Anything is better than Orbital, okay? It's basically like a coming of age kind of story. It's a woman recounting her time when she was back at uni, working at a bookstore during a recession, and she ended up living with her best friend and co-worker who's gay, and they inadvertently got swept up in this love affair scandal with Rachel's literature professor or some shit like that. I don't know. It was silly. I liked it. It felt like a fun little story about friendship. The next book that I read was Anniebot by Sierra Greer. With Anniebot, we follow Annie, who is an autodidactic Stella or sentient sex robot. She is created by a company called Stella Handy, and they are a company that make a range of household helper robots. There's Abigail robots, which are basically maids. They'll cook and clean around the house. There are nannies, and they basically take care of children. And there are Stellas, who are sex robots. They do also have the male counterpart, who are handies, and I don't know if it was discussed whether or not handies are just household chore. If you think it a handyman, so a handy, it would be doing household chores, but also a handy, it could also be the name of the sex robot. So I don't know if there are different names for the male sex robots, or if they are also called handies. But there are also then mannies, who are male nannies. Anniebot is owned by a man named Doug, and we basically watch or go through this book from Annie's first robot perspective, while her relationship with Doug basically becomes progressively abusive, essentially. But it's is it abusive? Because she's not technically a human being, although she is a sentient. Although she has sentience, she's not technically human to have that sort of sentience. So I rated the book 3 stars. I appreciated the fact that although Annie, the main character, is a sex robot, it's not an explicitly sexual kind of it's not smutty, it's not spicy. There are sex scenes, but it's not as if the sex scenes are the main draw of the book. There are some aspects of the book that I do wish that I went deeper on, and so I will talk about that in a little bit of a spoiler kind of section. Spoiler starting now. I mentioned that Doug's treatment of Annie basically becomes more abusive, and so I was hoping that the story itself would go deeper. Hear me out. I didn't need it to go deeper into explicit abuse of Annie, but I was hoping that she would go crazy and violent. I was hoping I would see I don't know, a robot use the hydraulic grip of her head to just squeeze stupid Doug's head, or poke his eyeballs out. I hated him. I was hoping that she would get a lot more violent and maybe kill him, but she didn't end up doing that. Boo. I also wish that the story had gone a little bit further into like the science behind the robots themselves. The robots themselves, they're supposed to be like lifelike, and it's mentioned that they're lifelike and they're able to get like identification, like an actual ID photo and stuff like that, because of the fact that they are grown from like abandoned embryos. So there is still like a human aspect behind the bot. Like it's basically just like a human shell that's been grown, but it has wires out the back, and you have a control panel that you can open her up. The sciencey kind of thing would have been like cooler to go deeper into. There's also like another part, basically, because Annie's like autodidactic mode, her like sentience, she's basically developed or like been able to develop herself into like a really advanced operating system, so to speak. So, she is higher, faster processing, and Doug ends up like selling her operating system for the Stellar Handy company to put into other robots, because they feel as if customers are going to really enjoy that. So there's like this promise that with any of the operating system that they do upload into any other robots, it's going to completely erase aspects that would link it back to Doug and Annie. So they would be, erasing personal kind of memories of like the actual house that they live in, her actual owner, Doug. They're going to be erasing those personalized aspects. There's like a part halfway through the book where Annie ends up like fleeing to this lake house of a service technician from Stellar Handy who was like nice to her one time. And so she's asking him for help. She's down in his basement and she sees that he has this like robot, like this human shape in the corner. And she finds out that that was actually a robot that this technician was trying to build to replace his dead son who died away at war. And so that memory of like the son dying at war and him trying to create like a robot, and then also the fact that she had her operating system sold, I thought that there was going to be a part where it sort of comes together. Hi, Miso. Partway through, Annie and Doug, they go for like a walk around their neighborhood, and there's like this guy across the road who's like staring at them and is like, "Do I recognize you guys? Do I know you guys?" And they're like, "No, we don't know you. You don't know Miso. Come on, man." They're later talking about it, and they're like, "Oh, I think that might have been a handy that had your operating system, loaded into it. So maybe there's an error." And personalized details having been completely erased from it. I feel like that fact is just kind of dropped, and then it's never revisited again. It's just like really frustrating that sort of topic got dropped, because I feel like it could have been something where it could have been gone into further. It could have been something that is kind of creepy. Are there going to be is there going to be like a whole bunch of robots standing outside of their window if they look out the window one morning? Like, that'd be so creepy. Or two, is it actually this guy's dead soldier son robot that's come back and like recognized them? If Sierra Greer is wanting to like create sequels or something like that could be cool. I wish that it had gone into those things off the bat. Coming up to the last couple of books that I read in April, I have this motherfucker right here. This book itself, it is supposed to be like a prequel book for the Hunger Games series, and I honestly would not have finished it if it weren't for the fact that it was a part of my book club for this month. Tossing up whether or not I should do like a full video about my thoughts on Sunrise on the Reaping. The only caveat to being able to like create one full video on Sunrise on the Reaping is the fact that I haven't actually read the Hunger Games series. I've only watched the movies. Sorry, the Hunger Games books were coming out at a time when I felt like I was not like other girls. I was in the prime age demographic, but I thought, no, I'm 15 now. I should be reading literature, so I should read Lolita. Okay, so I don't have the sort of strong nostalgia for the Hunger Games, as it appears that everyone else who was reviewing that goddamn book. According to Goodreads, this book has a 4.62 rating. A 4.62 rating. It Out of all the books that I have read in March and April, that is the highest rated book. Out of all the books that I've read this year, that is, again, the highest rated book that I've read. It appears like everyone and their mother love this book. And me and a very small percentage of people are the only dissenting few that did not like this book. I can't even like pinpoint one specific thing that I didn't like this book for. The main thing that I would say that I didn't appreciate about this book is the fact that it felt unnecessary, I guess, is one way to put it. It felt unnecessary for the canon of the Hunger Games. In my opinion, this book gave us nothing that hasn't already been said by the original Hunger Games trilogy. It tells us nothing new about Pan Am. It tells us nothing new about the capital. It tells us nothing new about Snorri. It tells us nothing new about these characters. It tells us nothing new about Haymitch. Hey guys, here's a spoiler for Sunrise on the Reaping. Haymitch goes to the Hunger Games and he wins the Hunger Game. We knew that already. We know exactly how his game goes. Haymitch goes to the 50th the 50th Hunger Game, the second quarter quell. He is one of 4 people who are reaped from District 12, and he goes and he competes in the Hunger Games and he wins. And we know how he wins because it's described to us in Catching Fire. I've seen people talk about it in YouTube videos, okay? Chapter 14 of Catching Fire. They discuss exactly how he wins the Hunger Games, okay? And they go through the exact same process in Sunrise on the Reaping. The majority of the book is just us reliving Haymitch at the fucking Hunger Games. And there's no stakes. It's pissing me off, okay? This book is like completely unnecessary because we know exactly what's going to happen. Haymitch is going to train for the Hunger Games, he's going to go to the Hunger Games, and he's going to win the Hunger Games. There are no stakes involved. It doesn't matter. We know that he survives because he's in the fucking trilogy. He's the one who's coaching Katniss and fucking Peter in the original trilogy. So why do I care about his Hunger Games? If it was going to be a book that showed us a whole lot more about his life before the Hunger Games, if it showed us more than just one morning with him and his eternal love, Lenore Dove, if it showed us more about his life in the same, in District 12 or whatever, and made me care about him, made me care about his little brother, made me care about his mum, made me care about any of the other characters that they sort of pepper in there. Oh, by the way, I was best friends with Katniss's dad. Shut the fuck up. Ew, okay? Like, stop referencing other characters that are linked into the normal trilogy. I don't care, okay? I don't care. Sorry, let me get back on track. If it was going to show me more about Haymitch's life before the Hunger Games, sure, I would have loved that. But we only get like one chapter before he's being whisked away to the capital for them to be trained. If it was going to show me more about Haymitch's guilt when he comes back, from the Hunger Games after winning the Hunger Games, having essentially killed or been a part of it. If he had some sort of like survivor's guilt, and if we discuss that survivor's guilt, if a majority of the book was discussing his survivor's guilt coming back from the Hunger Games, I would have loved that too, because it would have been more of like a character study. Sure, I would have loved it a lot more then. But again, we don't get that. We only get, 1-2 chapters about his time coming back from the Hunger Games, and half of it is intercut with all these fucking they just keep quoting who is that guy? They keep quoting so stupid songs, covey songs, but they're just like the poems from Edgar Allan Poe. Half of the last chapter is just Edgar Allan Poe, and I just was skimming that last chapter because it was giving me nothing. I don't care. All of the reviews are like, oh my god, Haymitch, no, Suzanne Collins, why would you do that to us? Do what? Do what? Did you genuinely get attached to any of these characters in the fucking games? Genuinely? Did you get attached to fucking Lulu? Did you get attached to Luella? We know she's gonna die. There was no stakes. And I feel like for so many people to have loved the Hunger Games growing up, obviously, if it's being overinflated to be rated a 4.62, for all of these people to love the Hunger Games and not be somewhat critical and think somewhat critically about this book that has obviously just been written as a fucking cash grab, for the cast of the fucking Sunrise of the Reaping movie to have been announced last week. You guys don't see that this is just a reason for you to give your money to these fucking Scholastic, to fucking Suzanne Collins, to the goddamn Lionsgate? Are they the ones producing it? I don't know. To these film people. They're banking on your nostalgia. They're banking on a bankable character, basically. They're putting all of their money on this bankable character. They know that you loved Woody Harrelson. Oh, this little scruffy old man who has a heart of gold, and we get to see why he has a heart of gold because everyone else died in the goddamn Hunger Games that he competed in. And we get to see him fall into alcoholism. Who cares? Let me just say this again, and just in case the take was corrupted. But for all of these people to sit here and say that Hunger Games was one of their favorite books growing up, favorite trilogies, favorite movies growing up, for you guys to read this book and think that it's amazing and not see it for the cash grab that it is baffling to me, because this book doesn't add anything to the story, okay? It doesn't add anything to the canon. If it was going to be something about why the Hunger Games were created, I would have loved that. If it was going to be something about, again, a character study about Haymitch's return and his survivor's guilt after returning from the Hunger Games, I would have loved that. But it is just a rehashing of a story that's already been told to us in chapter 14 of Catching Fire. So why does everyone love this book? And why did you make 390 goddamn pages out of it? All of my yellow tabs are things that were really annoying and really dumb. The very first yellow tab that I put of something that pissed me off, basically Haymitch is like bootlegging with this old lady named Hattie, bootlegging alcohol and creating like white alcohol. And so this woman gives him a bottle of alcohol and says, "Happy birthday, Haymitch. I figure if you're old enough to make it, you're old enough to drink it." I have to agree, and though I'm not a drinker myself, I'm glad to get the bottle. I can easily sell it or trade it, or possibly pass it on to Lenore Dubb's uncle, Clerk Carmine, so that he might have a kinder opinion of me. I'm not a drinker myself. Guess what? I didn't assume that a 15 turning 16-year-old child in the poorest district, in the poorest area of the poorest district in the whole of Pan Am, had ample access to alcohol. I didn't assume that a 15 turning on 16-year-old child would have that much alcohol to say that he would be a drinker. I didn't assume that a child could be an alcoholic. What the fuck do you mean? You're only saying that because of the nostalgia. The nostalgia. You guys are all under spells, okay? You guys are under spells because of this goddamn book. I love you guys, and I want you to be wiser, okay? I want you to be wiser. Have your wits about you. Don't fall for that bullshit. Moving on, okay? I need a palate cleanser. The next book that I read was a book that I really, really loved, okay? And I rated it a 5-star, and I think that it deserved a 5-star. The next book that I read, it was Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. This is such an interesting story, and I really like the premise of it, okay? The book, we follow a married couple, lesbians. Miri works in like some sort of like grant proposals or something like that. But Leah is, I think, a marine biologist. I think that's what she is. And Leah ends up going on this submersible expedition that's supposed to last for 3 weeks, but something goes wrong with the expedition and she ends up being gone for 6 months in total. Once Leah returns from this expedition, Miri is basically like, something has changed about her. Something has changed within her. Something is weird about her, right? Miri, who is not the marine biologist, most of her sort of chapters are from the perspective of, I guess, the present sort of tense, where she's talking about, taking care of Leah now that she's back from the expedition. She's also talking about, what she was, feeling when Leah was away or like lost on this expedition for like longer than was expected. And she sort of talks, although it like is something that had happened in the past, she does sort of talk about it with that tone of like reminiscing, of like remembering it. Any of the chapters that we have for Leah, it seems to be more of like that present tense, and we're following Leah and Leah's perspective when she is basically trapped in the submersible. It felt like so tense. There were scenes of like body horror, which weren't what I was expecting. I was just expecting like atmospheric type of gothic, but it ended up feeling like horror kind of gothic. I love this book. The one, I guess, downside that I did not like about the book itself, it was that once I noticed it, it ended up being really annoying. But like the dialogue tags that were being used, they start a sentence in quotation marks, then they chop it up to say she said, and then finish the rest of whatever they were saying. Hi, Mimi. Ow. once I noticed it, it became really fucking annoying. The way that, yeah, sentences would just be chopped up just to say she said, or he said, or I thought. It made the dialogue feel very clunky. Um, and so, yeah, I don't know. That would be like the one thing where if I were an editor of a book, that would be the one thing that I would, make notes on, to say change that. The final book that I read in April, I don't know if I was just on theme or something like that. Like Our Wives Under the Sea was lesbian nautical. But I also read Boulder by Eva Baltasar, translated by Julia Sanchez, I believe, which is also lesbians, kind of nautical. Boulder is very short, real sweet. Not sweet, I guess, but we follow the perspective of Boulder, who is a cook, line cook basically, on like a freight ship, and she ends up falling in love with this woman called Samsa, and she ends up moving to Iceland with Samsa. Once she gets to Iceland after a couple of years, Samsa is like, I want a baby. Boulder is basically like, I didn't want a baby. What the frick? Boulder is not like a good person at all, but I really loved her. She's crazy, she's mean, but I love her, you know? I don't know. Boulder was kind of like a mother in the way that a dad would be. Do you know what I mean there? Like, basically, like, because it's a lesbian relationship, Samsa is the one who is, going through the pregnancy. It is Samsa's egg that gets fertilized. It's Samsa going through the hormone treatment to harvest the eggs to then be implanted into her. So it's Samsa experiencing the physical changes of motherhood, whereas Boulder, she's a woman, but she's a woman who's, going into parenthood, but she's completely detached from the, process of becoming a parent. She's not physically changing due to pregnancy. And so, she is kind of like a dad in a sense, because I don't know, she's completely detached biologically from this baby. And so she feels like she's just there to provide, financial support to Samsa and this baby. And she feels like, I guess, jealousy. It feels as if she feels like jealousy towards the baby, but then when she ends up spending time with the baby, it feels more like she's jealous of the connection that Samsa and the baby has. But then she's like chill with the baby too. She ends up like loving the baby just as much and being like, "That's my fucking buddy." Like, your mom's a fucking bitch, but you're my buddy. I don't know. It felt really interesting to see lesbians, unlikable, mean lesbians, unlikable, cheating, mean lesbians who are kind of like a dad in a way, but also a mother. Okay, that that was Boulder, and I rated Boulder a 4 star. My camera like literally died just as I was about to wrap it up. Hi, Mimi. I have to go feed him dinner, but oh my god, Miso, stop. That was basically the wrap up of the 9 books that I read in March and April this year. So here is a little recap, I guess, of my progress for my 25 books of 2025, as well as like my star ratings for those books. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have similar opinions to me for like any of the books, especially Sunrise on the Reaping, I would love to hear it, because I feel like I'm going crazy trying to look at, everyone else's reviews, trying to find like a 1-star review of that on Goodreads and reading through them. Ugh, like, I agree with every single one of them, but then like looking at the comments on those reviews, oh my god, people are sending death threats. Not really, I don't know if they are, but like people are getting heated. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of me. Please let me know if there's anything in particular that you want to see from me. Thank you, bye.